Mancini per Nedved, gol! Pirlo, la conclusione in rete! Andrea Pirlo, un gol pazzesco! Del Piero, gol! Alex Del Piero! La palla di Pogacar, Pogba, rete! Un gol incredibile! Pogba fa esplodere lo Juventus Stadium!
Ciao tifosi bianconeri, hello and welcome to episode 362 and therapy session 97 for this
at least
this week. It is over. It has ended. The dreaded 2025-2026 season has come to an end, and we are here to review the final match of this season and just share some of our emotion and what's going through our mind as we move into what is certainly going to be an interesting summer mercato and time between now and next season. Not quite sure what the appropriate adjective is. We are going to refrain a bit from a full post-season review. We're going to schedule that hopefully for later this week. But I am Kevin, your host for this episode, and despite yesterday's shenanigans, I am proud to be here today with these three lovely gentlemen, Zach, Jack, and Frederic. I'd ask how we're doing, but I know the answer. But great to have you guys here. We haven't had this group before in a while.
Hey, we have a job to do. We rain or shine, win, loss, draw, sixth place or first. We have a job to do, so that's why we're here, right?
I just want a Scudetto talk. You know, hey, we won the Scudetto. How's everybody feeling? I mean, it's only obvious that if we make it someday, we'll have to uncork some champagne live.
I look forward
for something.
It's good to be back. I think the last time I was on was the Bologna game where I think we went that Atalanta, Milan, Bologna 7 out of 9 points, and we were feeling good. So unfortunately, I'm back on a low point, but it's wonderful to see everybody who's joining us live and you guys again for sure. I think the last time, Frederic, we were celebrating a Scudetto, my beard was all black and looked like Zach's. So
I think I still have hair, or at least more than I have now. So.
Oh, well, Jack, it's definitely great to have you back. We are live on YouTube. For those of you who are here with us, we see a lot of familiar faces. El Capitano, Emeritani, JJ Acrepi, Juve since 95, Bianconero, Ale Juve, Magical Realism, 82. It's so great to have you with us. If you're watching this on YouTube afterwards, or if you're here with us now, a like and a subscription to our channel means so much. And if you're listening on audio format on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please take your phone out of your pocket. Or if you're running, walking, that 5-star review means so much to us. Thank you so much. And you can, of course, follow us on Instagram at Turin Giants. And then also the Scoop Juve, which is our Instagram handle for all transfer and Mercato related news. So, guys, getting into it. Torino 2, Juventus 2. We went up 2-0 through a Vlahovic brace. We were in control. Then we collapsed. 2 goals from Casadei and Adams. Surprise, surprise. 2 set pieces. We finished the season outside of top 4. I think a few people had maybe some misplaced optimism that somehow a miracle would be experienced yesterday. It was not. The Europa League finish and confirmation for next season was certainly certified as our delayed first half ended. And then, of course, we have the shenanigans and the issues that happened before the match, going into the match, delayed the match. A dear fan hospitalized before kickoff. Our own ultras kind of threatening to do a pitch invasion. The kickoff delayed an hour. Torino with their ridiculous statement on dress code and fan inclusion going into the weekend. And like, this was the environment that we sent our team out to play in. And the club could not even create the conditions for 90 minutes of focused football to wrap up the season. And if you wanted one match to summarize this season, I think this was it, right? Moments of control that we can't capitalize on, good stretches that just unravel under pressure, which we've seen either within games or over stretches of games. Once again, I think poor pre-game and in-game management from Spalletti. Substitutions didn't show any inspiration, no momentum. We had no answer when Torino started pushing. We have moments of misplaced egoism and selfishness, and I'm sure we'll talk about Vlahovic a bit later, despite his 2 goals. Look, guys, 3 coaches in 13 months, Motta, Tudor, Spalletti, pretty much identical points per game across all 3. We know we don't have a coaching problem. We have a squad problem. We have a quality problem. We have a management problem, a front office problem. We just saw Milan within the last hour or two before recording this pretty much sack their entire front office and move on from Allegri. As of now, at the time of recording this, there have been no confirmed changes yet. And I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit too. Is that a good thing for continuity, or is that a bad thing that we're not taking action and not holding anybody accountable? So a lot to unpack here. Again, we're going to stay focused on this match, just kind of our thoughts here, what's going on. Frederic, if you have any kind of inside information on what you might be hearing, we'll do that, but we'll keep a season reflection until later. Jack, you, as you mentioned, you've kind of missed out the last couple episodes. Would love for you to kick things off for us.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks everyone for joining us. I think if I had to encapsulate yesterday, Kevin, you threw was this a metaphor for our season out there? But I think I'll zoom in a little bit more. The mix of emotions from what was happening before the match to the delayed start to we already knew our season outcome at halftime, to watching the team capitulate yet again. The roller coaster was nonstop, wanting to believe that there was a chance that we could pull off a victory and get a little bit of help, to no avail. I don't know to what end that would have brought us anyway. I think we've sort of been riding this merry-go-round for a while. But this game, I think, encapsulated what our season really was. Coming out with some hope, flawed changes, capitulating in the most dire moments when we needed to step up, and the team showing, absolutely no fight, and a lack of a backbone, particularly in the second half. Granted, they already knew the result of the other games, but just like salt in the wound, really. And I think for the last 24-ish hours, I guess, kind of been going through the grieving process, right? Starts with a bit of sadness and, that bitter pit in your stomach. It eventually becomes anger and questioning and, all of those emotions that you kind of go through. But that's been my last 24 hours. I actually have had the pleasure of listening to you gentlemen on the post games for the past few weeks. Unfortunately, a lot of them were therapy sessions, but listening to you guys definitely was therapy for me, because addressing this and feeling this and trying to work through this on my own, talking to a 10-year-old and an 11-year-old who are my only local Juventus fans, it's not the same thing as getting online with you guys. And,
it's not the same.
Whether it's Frederic's anger or Zach's pointed analysis, I appreciate you guys, and I hope I can bring a little levity. I try to be positive, but it's really tough today.
Thanks, Jack. Zach, I'd like to go next to you, because I think let's build the crescendo to Frederic's explosion here.
So you're sensing the heat radiating off of his bald head too.
I sure
I
am.
can
So
I can
let's give the
feel
people
it.
what they want. Let's build to that moment.
But the game was very simple. You expect to see, in the first half at least, the fight of a team playing for its season. And in the second half, after we already know we're doomed to finish in 5th or 6th place, the drive of players playing not only for pride as competitive athletes, but also out of respect for the occasion, their fans, and their management who support them and pay their wages. And just like we've seen in most games this season, we saw neither. And when you say there was nothing to play for in the second half, we knew our destiny or where we were going to place it in that second half. I mean, you had a Cagliari team who came out and beat Milan. They had nothing to play for. You had a Verona team who was already relegated when they drew with us and pushed Roma to extra time, even despite being down 10 men. I mean, if these teams can find the fight and the drive, having nothing to play for, we have no excuse when we're in a derby and with a much maligned team to show that they have what it takes, mentality and technicality. And I was really disappointed that even in the simplest moments this year, the team has failed in the most basic aspects of competitive sport. And that makes me really, 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 really concerned and upset.
Have your moment, Frederic.
It's difficult to put into words how I'm feeling. Last week, I think I felt deflated, and I thought it'd be better as time went on. But after yesterday's performance and the way we choose to handle things on the pitch and off the pitch, I think it's honestly the first time I can say in my life that I'm actually ashamed of Juventus. I wasn't ashamed when we went to Serie B. Wasn't ashamed when we lost to Champions League finals. Wasn't ashamed when we didn't make it through the round of 16 or semifinals of the Champions League. I'm honestly ashamed of what staff, management, and players put out there. I'm ashamed for the millions of people that cheer Juventus on, that feel love and connection to this team, that are so desperately waiting for us to pick up the pace, for us to get that sense of revitalization in, turn things around. And I'm ashamed for those people. I'm ashamed for my club, for how they wear the badge, how they chose not to honor it, and how they run it. There isn't a single thing in this club or in this team right now that renders me proud, that makes me feel a part of a family with a shared objective, with the all or nothing, the fino alla fine credo. For me, nothing's left anymore. And in the moments when we had setbacks in the past, I, after a while, could see, that sparkle at the end of the tunnel, or could see the basis, the foundation that we had, that we needed to build upon, or that could help us in the future. And I don't see that anymore. And I find it disgraceful, utterly disgraceful, how some people that work for Juventus, that get paid millions on and off the pitch, how they conduct themselves, and how they, in my opinion, deliberately choose to sabotage not only this club, but football in general. And I'm beyond devastated.
There was a moment. Actually, I want to just throw this out there right now to get your reaction to it. I could not think of a more misplaced response or show of arrogance or a complete lack of reading the room and understanding the moment he was in when Vlahovic had the nerve, after scoring that second goal, to celebrate like he had just scored a winning goal against in some kind of final or that it meant something other than just doing a job, being professional, and recognizing the moment when just a handful of minutes earlier, it was confirmed that you're finishing outside of top 4, and that this team has put on a disgraceful show on the aggregate for this season. And the guy who's the most handsomely paid player, not only within Juventus, but in Serie A, who, yes, he's had injuries, of course, but has not had a meaningful impact on the season, celebrating his own achievements in a very, very dark period for this team, and perhaps what will be his final impact for this squad. Grateful for the goal, but the way he chose to behave afterwards had my blood boiling. You pick up that ball, you walk back to the center circle, you keep your head down and just be professional and recognize what's going on. I don't know if that moment struck you the way that it did me, but that was it really struck a nerve.
It didn't strike me the same way, Kevin, and I'm somewhat surprised actually that it seems like you're having this realization for the first time. It's like that's just Vlahovic, when David joins, he posts all his number 9 posts on social media. I mean, the guy bought into his own hype, and he forgets that he hasn't shown it on the pitch for 4 years, except for small little snippets. And by demonstrating what he did yesterday, it's so clear that he doesn't care. He doesn't care about any of the missed passes, the missed controls, the missed chances. He can stake his name on the 60, I think 7 or 8 now goals he scored for us, and say, "Look at me, I'm the hero." When everything around him crumbles. So like that to me wasn't a surprise. It wasn't. I felt nothing about his celebration because I already considered him a player who cares only about himself, and not about the team, not about his teammates. And I really hope that the management can pull together enough striker transfers that we don't need to retain him, considering the likelihood that the other 3 strikers on our team depart.
I think there's a small bit of overlap between both of your comments. I kind of agree with Kevin, but if you remember his very first Serie A goal against Udinese, the celebrations were identical. It was that knee slide to the corner with the wave of the arm, like, "Here I am." And I hope now it's knee slide to the corner with a wave of the arm. We'll see you the F later.
Maybe.
I'm not so confident, but this is what, this is kind of the stamp that you can put on all the team. Not Vlahovic in particular, because I knew that he was going to be happy because in his eyes, it's, hey, look, I scored, so teams must be interested in me. We'll probably see this and meet my demands or whatever when I leave, or I don't know what's going on in that guy's head. But I don't know what's going on in all those guys' head, to be honest. If what we saw yesterday, and yesterday for me was the prime example of how we shine in the past, like everything against us, all or nothing, us against the world. It's when the players we used to have, who had a heart for the team and still do, who said, "Let's give it. Let's go out with a bang. We might not make it, but at least we tried and we honored the badge." If you see these sad excuses of players playing, and I'm talking about everyone I saw yesterday, to me, I have no emotional attachment. I have nothing to gain financially from them or lose financially. I'm just so mad at them for behaving, whether it be celebrating for a useless goal or standing by. There were people laughing prior to the game. Somebody's life was in danger after what happened, and we'll talk about that later. And it was an all or nothing game and a derby to top it off. And I see people in just outside the dressing room laughing, having fun, and like it's a training session. Like it's a goddamn training session. And this is what bothers me. This is what bothers me, and this is what's wrong with this team. And if we don't start to realize that soon, EI management, whoever's in charge, because clearly nobody knows who's in charge anymore. I'll get to that later on as well. How do you expect to build something, let alone win, but just lay the foundation or for you to win in the future? That's not going to happen. And by renewing all these players who have been insufficient for the past couple of years with ups and downs, but still insufficient as a whole, what kind of benchmark are you setting there? Not only for yourself, but for your teammates, for the people outside who are cheering you on. Utterly shambolic, and at times we show so much bad taste as a team and as players that's not even funny anymore. Poor taste and even worse football skills.
If you're a betting man, Frederic, right now with what you know, are we re-signing or moving on from Vlahovic?
What I know is Spalletti is regarded highly by Alcon. From what I know, Spalletti really wants to keep him.
And I guess what you get to the heart of that, and is that really driven by he sees a footballing IQ, he sees a potential that he can work with, and if he can stay fit, somebody who can score 20 goals in Serie A, or is that, hey, I know what I have with him, I don't trust the rest of the organization to find somebody better?
I think it's a mixture
I'm
of
really
both.
curious how Spalletti is viewing that, to get inside.
It's a mixture of both, I feel. And to me, it's also, Spalletti hasn't worked a lot with Vlahovic. Of course, he's been here for months now, so he gets to know Vlahovic. I just don't think that he realizes the intricate things that renewing Vlahovic will trigger in the dressing room. And if Spalletti's looking at the technical and footballing aspect of it all, and not just the people behind the footballers, then that's his first big mistake, because the dressing room is rotten to its core. It's how it is. I can't put it any differently or sugarcoat it. The dressing room is rotten. There's no group. There's no group spirit. There's no friendship. There's no, noses in the same direction, whatever. It's a mess. And if you keep the people who've been here for a number of years and see that, after year 3, 4, or 5, it's still the same situation, and you just tend to say, but he'll score some goals, let's keep him, then I think we're in for another shit season next season, in all honesty. And I hope to God I'm wrong, and that Vlahovic stays thanks to Spalletti and he scores 40 goals last season. But we have to be realistic as well, and I just don't see it happening, nor do I want him in my team, in all honesty. Maybe I'm a bit biased here, but this is not the kind of person I want to represent Juventus. This is not the striker that I want. And yeah, but I'm not in charge. So
I think Frederic touched on something, though, with both his Vlahovic answer as well as his previous one. He said, I don't know what's going through these players' minds. And I think a lot of it is fear. They're afraid. They're afraid to fail. They're afraid to try. I think they're afraid to be successful. I think too much of them are rooted in fear, and that's why that uncertainty inevitably bleeds into this team during large swaths of every game they've played this year. That's why the concentration lapses, as if they are just waiting for the goal to be conceded. I don't think Vlahovic improves the collective mentality of the team to the extent that others can put their faith and their trust and their confidence in him, or use him as a catalyst for that. That's what we so desperately need. And to bring in such a powerful character who has the potential to only work against that, you're only shooting yourself in the foot.
Zach, I think your point is also reinforced with them being afraid by honestly asking ourselves, when was the last time we saw this team play with any heart? And in my mind, I go straight to the second leg against Galatasaray. And really, because they honestly had nothing to lose, was the only time that they really got their backs up and played out of their minds, honestly, for a good 65 minutes in that game. And it's when they honestly had nowhere else to go but down. I'm sorry, nowhere else to go but up. Because they had no other choice. I feel like that situation, maybe not that score line, presented itself multiple times over the course of the season, but that fear was crippling. In addition, they don't know what success looks like. I don't know that we have a player on this roster that knows what success looks like and knows how to get from that point of fear and stagnation, like stuck in quicksand, to pushing themselves through hard work, collaboration with their teammates and their coaches, with the physios and everyone else involved in the back office there, in the locker room, to get themselves to a point of being successful and understanding what it takes to get there. I don't know that we have the mentality to do that, or anyone who can step up and show the rest of the team in the locker room what that looks like, and on the field what that looks like.
I think that's there's two things to that. I mean, one, you have to bring in the right players, but two, and we said this in the last episode, that it baffles me that so many players on our team don't actually have a drive to play this game. You can tell, like Coop Miners, to quote my father, is a lost ball in tall weeds. He doesn't know where he is, what to do. He doesn't know how to run. He's slow as all get out. David, a player that I supported very much in the early part of the season because I thought he would be very successful, certainly as a foil to Vlahovic's skill set, is running with cinder blocks on each foot. The whole team, they don't have any effort. Chico, as infuriating as he is, dude at least tries 110% for the time he's on the pitch. Like, I can applaud that despite him making bad decisions and not producing, at its basis core. At least try. I don't see why that should be a conversation we never have, right? Trying should be the baseline, right? And then you just go up from there of who's got the technical ability, who's got the production. These guys don't try. Like, you can't even get to play like a winner if these guys are lazy or complacent, as we got in the second half of that. They don't even have the basics. And that's a fault of recruiting. That's a fault of culture. That's a fault of leadership within the locker room, as well as from the coaching perspective. But it's that sickness that Frederick's talking about that has now festered, and we have to cut it out. We have to cut it out like a surgery to start over, so that we have the baseline. People who are going to go out there and bleed for the shirt. I don't care if they stink. At this point, we are so sick that you have to get people who are going to go out there and try their hardest, and then you build up from there.
And I think you captured what is so disappointing and depressing about the state of this squad, where you look at the players who, I think with good, reasonable, like our understanding of us as fans, either in the stadium or on our couch or wherever we're watching the game, can see players like Chico, Kalulu, McKennie. It's been not quite as consistent recently, but on the whole, Kelly, like the players who you think are genuinely giving their all. But these are all players who are starting, that they have a starting position. There are players in our past who we commended their heart and their work effort. You look at Paruin, Sturaro, Alessandro Matri, like Benatia, like these are players who played really, really hard, but they were They were bench players or a reserve player that you could trust upon them when called upon, but they were not your starting 11 player. And here we are now where we have these players as our starting 11, and we know that in any one of those past teams, mid to late 90s, early 2000s, the 9-season title winning stretch, they'd all be bench players or reserves. Every single one of those guys. Chico, McKennie, Kelly, Kalulu, those guys that are showing heart.
They're showing heart, but somehow you still feel that they're not part of the team. And I like the whole maximum effort and showing heart. I really applaud it because it's kind of a very hard task to pull off of this team, but even that for me is not enough.
Of course it's not enough, Frederic. The point is we're so bad. We have regressed so much as a team. I think due to the festering culture that you're talking about, that what do we have to hang our hat on? We can't hang it on results. We have the worst outcome in 15 years. You can't hang it on the coach's leadership. The coach is blaming everybody, trying to bypass people in leadership. You can't rest it on our starting 11. Half of them are lazy. But there's nothing else to rest it on. But at least, all that's left is just try, give effort, show us as supporters that you are fighting for the team, that you're fighting for the jersey, that you're fighting for the fans, that you're fighting for your pride. And the fact that we can only point to half of the starting 11 and say that those guys actually have the dog in them. They might not be great. They might be bench players in teams in the past, but at least they try. Just shows you how far we've fallen.
Yeah. We're a social media club.
I do hear where you're coming from, Zach, and I could appreciate the whole effort argument, but the Coyote tried with a shit ton of effort to catch the Roadrunner, and he was the fool every time because the effort was misguided, misplaced, used the wrong tools. Like I get it. We're looking for some low-hanging fruit to grab onto. But yeah, Chico tries. But to what avail? It's the wrong pass. It's a horrible shot. He lets the ball go at the first minute of the game. He doesn't trap the ball. It goes under his foot and it goes out of bounds for a throw into the other team on that free kick from Logan.
I think you're misunderstanding my point. My point is nothing to do with Chico as much as we're talking about him. My point is the fact that effort is the only thing we have to talk about. Is signs that,
and that should be the baseline. Like that should be the expectation of anybody stepping foot on the field.
And that's what I'm saying.
Effort is a given.
Effort.
In what world? I mean, you look at. I got to be honest. During halftime, I switched over to the Verona game because that was the Como at that point was up 4-1 or whatever. That game was over. 10-man Verona played with more heart, having been relegated weeks prior, down to 10 men, down 1. They played with more heart than Juventus has in weeks. And it's embarrassing when you watch a Sassuolo or a Parma or a already relegated Verona and you see there's not the quality, but you see the heart. And we don't why it's a culture thing, it's a recruitment thing, but the fact that we can't look at this team and I challenge anyone to say that I'm wrong in this regard, that you could see 11 players giving their all, because I want to see that. It's so obvious that we don't. That just shows you how sick this team is.
I think it was last week. I haven't talked about this yet on a podcast. I spoke to a former Juventus player, not a big star, but he made first team. Well, while there were a lot of very good players at that time. And I asked him, what is this big difference in terms of, pointing out the issues? Because in the past, we had issues as well, but they were ironed out very quickly and also very, how shall I say it, punctually. If something, in the dressing room tended to explode, there was somebody on it to diffuse the situation. If something went wrong in terms of the footballing aspect or what we were bringing on the pitch, somebody was there to wake these guys up. And the guy I spoke to actually confirmed that. He said, while I was there, we had Agnelli, and I have no knowledge about finances or how to run a club. What I do know is when we came in for practice, he was already there. When we left, he was still there. He came into the dressing room. He went to the kid people. He went to the coaches, to staff. He even talked to us. And a fun anecdote he told me, the player I'm talking to was loaned out to a team also within Europe, but short near my end. Let's keep it at that. And I think 2 days prior to him leaving, Agnelli saw him somewhere at Continassa or at the stadium or wherever. And he called him in and he said, I just wanted to thank you. I know that I always part, but for me, you embody the spirit of Juventus. And I know it's a hard decision. It's always a hard decision for us. But no, whenever you need something, whatever, here's my personal line, and gave out his number. Feel free to reach out. If I'm not responsive, leave a voicemail or text me a message and we can talk. And he was so blown away by that, but only the thing, also by the things that happened prior to that, because he saw a president that cared for the club and was in constant communication with everybody, with every little cogwheel in that machine. And every little cogwheel in that machine felt respected, felt the love, and wanted to give something back without even realizing that they were giving something back. They were just, all in this cocoon of Juventus. They felt appreciated, they felt looked after, and they felt important. And for me, having a president like we have it in Italy, because there's not a lot of teams outside of Italy where you have that presence of a president. For me, that's something that's vital. You need somebody who is the boss at the top, and we could say now Comoli is the boss, but I feel a president has more, shall I put it, pizzazz than just a general director, and somebody who's willing to talk to everybody and everything. And when things go wrong or you fuck up, that person addresses you or the team. That's called accountability. We don't have any accountability because after the Fiorentina game, we saw Spalletti defending the players. And if I'm a player and I play poorly and I'm all but knocked out of the Champions League race, and my coach says, well, the guys tried, they did their best, and blah, 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 I'll go to work in the morning or to practice without a headache. But if I have a president who comes in and shits thunder and makes me feel that I'm gonna, that I was in the wrong and that I didn't represent what he's building and working for, then I know that, I have to improve. And this is the thing, there's no stimulus for players to improve anymore. There's no objective to maintain or to uphold, and you keep living in limbo and just saying, well, it's over and done with, on to the next. That's not the way Juventus works. And the sooner some people at the top realize that, the better. I'm sorry for the rest.
No, I think maybe it gives us a good moment to pause for a little bit on something that impacted the match yesterday, that caused a lot of questions on what was actually happening with the antics with the police, with the fans, that unfortunately led to the hospitalization of one fan. I think there were a number of questions depending on which broadcast you were watching and which country you were in. I think there was a lot of limited news on what was going on, who's at fault, what's going on, what's happened since then. So I think everybody's probably interested a little bit on what actually happened and what we're seeing now. So I thought it would make sense just to talk about that just for a moment. And then we can continue on with our episode and thinking about kind of what comes next, which Frederic has already kind of shared some of his perspective. Now, when we look at yesterday, I think, as we all know at this point, on Sunday, there were violent clashes between Juventus and Torino ultras in the streets around the Stadio Olimpico Grande, Torino, in the hours before kickoff. And there is a Juve fan still today Marco Leonardo Basuku. I think he was incorrectly in the news. It was, his age was wrong. I think they said a 45-year-old, but I think he's actually 36. He lives in Milan. He's an accountant. I think he's associated with the Viking group in Milan of Juve supporters. And sometime around 5 p.m. Outside the stadium, he was struck in the head during this chaos. And I at one point, it was this kind of tear gas canister hurled by the police. And I think as of today, it was just something hard, and it could have been a bottle. He went through emergency overnight surgery in one of Turin's most respected hospitals, the Molinette Hospital, and remains in intensive care in a medically induced coma. As of, from what we can understand, he's not in his life in this moment is not at risk, but is certainly in critical condition, and that can change from one moment to the next. There is an investigation ongoing with CCTV footage reportedly having captured the moment. So trying to understand what has happened between Juve ultras, Torino ultras, and the police. And we all know well, maybe not everybody knows, but within Italy, it is known that some of the local police, unfortunately, there can be loyalty towards certain clubs, and which can impact the way that the law gets enforced or not enforced. And I'm not trying to create any speculation, but that does come into play when we're talking about Italy. What has led up to a lot of this was going into the weekend. I think, as many folks saw, and if you didn't, Torino put out a publication and an email to people who had purchased tickets, indicating that if you're going to show up wearing a Juve kit or wearing black and white colors to certain sections within the stadium outside of the designated ospiti section, that you would be denied entry. Juve put out a pretty firm statement that this is ridiculous, more or less. This is, we should be professional. Sport has its role in our lives, and this is no way to treat and segment people. And it kind of spilled over into the weekend, where Drughi, one of the Juve ultras, I think I read, they have I don't know if stronghold's the right word, or where they meet in Moncalieri, which is a neighborhood right outside of center of Turin. And there was marching and fireworks and pyrotechnics, I think, going into the weekend, which kind of got a lot of attention. And the Torino ultras, I think on Saturday and going into Sunday, had their fair share of exploitations within the city, which just kind of boiled into the fan groups outside the stadium having this issue. And then I think in the aftermath, well, I mean, we know that there was just concern internally on whether the turmoil outside the stadium would spill into the stadium. There were scarves and kits being burned. I think local authorities were unsure if there would be violence within the stadium. We know that some of our fans spoke with Locatelli and some folks from Juve. There was threats that they would invade the pitch if the pitch started, and we needed to respect our fans and not play the match. But ultimately, the match went on. As we know, it was delayed an hour. 8 Juve fans have been arrested. 11 stadium bans have been issued. And I guess 6 police officers have been injured in the clashes. But Marco, who is a Juventino, our thoughts are with him and his family, and hope for a full recovery. Frederic, I imagine perhaps you've had some other information kind of come your way through your sources. Just curious if there's anything else you can share on this.
Well, it's a bit of I spoke to a couple of people I know from back in the day who are not active, and some are. But what was the biggest issue was basically the fact that a lot of Torino fans prior to the game were kind of picking a fight in the sense that there were some harsh words thrown around. And we can expect that when two ultra groups clash, but it was beyond distasteful, which led to some small altercations, and everything that you basically just said ensued. Um, I also spoke to somebody who's still an active Drugi member, and he said, well, he stood next to some of the people that were had a conversation with Locatelli and with Vlahovic, if I'm not mistaken. And they explained the situation to the players, what happened, and from what I could tell, or from what he said, Locatelli was genuinely shocked. And at a certain point in the conversation, Locatelli said, "But what do you want us to do?" And then the ultra said, "Well, don't play. This is one of us that's fighting for his life at this point, because at that point it wasn't so sure that he'd make it out or not." And yeah, they were very disappointed when they didn't do that. And I'm not biased towards Drugi or Viking or whoever, but I feel they did the right thing by leaving. And I just wish, and I told the guys that I know as well, I wish they'd do a bit more in terms of not only when these unfortunate things happen, because we're talking about a person's life here, which to me is more important than football, but also on the footballing aspect. If you see what happens at Milan at times, and you might not be for it, but the way they handle themselves, carry themselves, they still have some pull. And I feel that we, as a unit, as supporters, need that pull as well. Because we're making a podcast, other guys are making a podcast, you can read online, and everybody feels the same way, but there's no resolution. The only thing I feel is really upsetting to me, apart from the footballing aspect, is that, somebody's life is still at risk. Maybe it's not, it's not life threatening, but it's serious enough. It was a very harsh cranial trauma that he suffered, from what I could tell. I think part of his skull was fractured, and the parts that were fractured were pushing into his soft brain tissue. I'm no doctor, I'll never will be, but I think
It's
it's fair
not
to
good.
say that it's not good, and it will have consequences on his future life, I think. For a football game and for territory, I fail to understand the whole vibe behind that. Um, I need my supporters, or I want ideally my supporters to defend my team wherever we go without being overly violent. And let's just say I would have showed more understanding if some of that criticism and some of the passive aggressiveness was pointed towards player and management, because I still saw a lot of people applaud when we couldn't win from Verona. If that would have happened 10 years ago, they'd tear the Allianz down. So
this whole situation is a giant shit show for the organizers, from the police to the Italian Football Federation. You have the police and the organizers of the game unable to guarantee the safety of people who are going to watch the game. In fact, the peacekeepers being the ones who ultimately injure this individual to the point where he needs life-saving emergency medical care. You have games that are supposed to be played at the same time that, some were delayed, like 7 minutes, where Juventus was delayed 66 or 67 minutes, to the point where at halftime we knew what we had to play for, which, if other results had gone a different way, actually would have given us an enormous advantage of information. From start to finish, everything surrounding the circumstances was handled disastrously, where now we have the whole mandate of playing at the same time broken, but whatever. It's no big deal, right? You have a fan injured by the people who are supposed to protect them and keep them safe and allow them to watch the team that they love, that they spent money for, right? That's well, and really nobody but Juventus fans seems to be talking about it. Everything about that day, to the least important aspect, which depressingly enough is the result, all of it, complete shit show.
Yeah. And can we take a moment to imagine what would have happened if things went our way, in the sense that, the others fumbled it, and with the time difference, we would have won. Can you imagine the outrage, prosecution, investigations that would have been held, committees that would have been automatically popped up all over Italy? I mean, it's amateurism at best.
But I would have understood it. See, the thing is I don't think anything would have changed in that regard. Like, it's not the team or the fans' fault that this stuff happened, but it's the fact that the disorganization of the league and of the game organizers even allowed that to happen is just indicative of an organization as dysfunctional as Juventus is. I would have, if I was Roma or Como and I got knocked out because Juventus had the advantage of information and time, I would have been livid. Not necessarily at Juventus, but at the organization of this league. Everything about it was bad. And oftentimes in sport, when Juventus is hard done by these rules and investigations, we grumble and we moan and we complain, but we move on. But when there's somebody's life impacted, safety impacted, like, that's unacceptable. This is sport. It's about passion. It's about fun, right? We're not having fun today, but in the grand scheme of things, it's about passion and fun. And there should never be a circumstance where our safety and our livelihood should be in question, and something rooted in passion and fun.
And I think we could be, fortunate in that sense that the Juventus supporters chose to turn the other cheek. It could have went a whole different way and a whole lot darker if they would have started, provoking or protesting or resorting to violence, and they chose to just leave the stadium, and setting or showing a message there, which is a passive way of protesting. And I'm glad they chose that route, because if they had gone for the more aggressive route, could have been way, and it would be way worse. So, we all things considered, we can be happy, but it just goes to show that Serie A, the people who run it, and I'm not talking about refereeing decision or whatever, but everything around Serie A at this point, nobody wants to touch it with a 10-foot pole. People often ask, how is it possible that not like bigger players are playing in Italy? I think that's the least of our worries. If you look at that, even the moderately gifted ones chose to flee. Calafiori fucked off to London, and you're not gonna tell me in any way, shape, or form that London is more interesting than Milan or Turin, for that matter. But they know what they're dealing with. They see the decline, and they react onto that. And Serie A and everything surrounding Serie A is so outdated, it's not even funny anymore.
Yeah, if you're a neutral tuning into this game, and there's all this last day drama in Serie A with the red cards given in the other games, and the games have to start at the same time, but actually not really. Juventus can start 67 minutes late because the police hurt a fan, and then the fan group of the fan that was hurt has to leave the stadium. If I'm a neutral looking at this stuff as, maybe I'll give Serie A a chance on the last drama-filled day, I'm looking at this like, what is this absolute complete chaos? And not in the good way. If I'm a player, if I'm an investor, if I'm a potential buyer of a team, if anything, anybody, like, I'm not looking at that and saying, oh boy, I really want to get involved with that. That sounds fun.
Runs the gamut, right? From a completely neutral fan all the way to a million or billion-dollar investor. I'd only add a few things. I'm not going to belabor the point. Number one, it was a 72-hour controversy a week prior when the games had to be moved. Literally in the paper, and there were debates about it endlessly online. Yet yesterday it was no problem, Zach, like you said, to move the game 67 minutes back. Number two, sport, like you said, is about passion. It's about love and camaraderie, and it should never be about violence. Most people, I can't speak for everyone, I'd say most fans follow a team and spend their hard-earned money to go to the stadium to take a break from the stresses of daily life, to enjoy something that they're really passionate about, and in a lot of instances have a stake in, right? Usually emotionally. And that didn't happen, right? These things should absolutely never happen. And the last thing I would add from a personal, like my best to our brother in black and white. I hope there's a speedy recovery and 100% recovery, because these things shouldn't happen in sport. And it's sad that we even have to talk about it.
So I want to thank you guys for your perspective on that. We couldn't get through a Torino-Juventus post game, even though we're not dissecting this game in any detail as if it was another kind of normal match, because where we are at the end of the season, this was anything but a normal match, but definitely had to cover what happened prior to this game, especially given that somebody was tragically injured. And again, all the best to Marco and his recovery. Frederic, there is a specific transfer. Well, rumor's not the right word. We all know it's very much a real thing, and there's some news kind of percolating in the background here as we record. Do you want to share what's happening?
Well, I read that Alisson has signed for Juventus, so I checked with my source. He signed personal terms, but not the contract in itself. Because there's still something that we need to do with Liverpool, but will be a matter of hours. Liverpool gave the green light, and I think, from what I could tell, I'm just going to grab the message. The official contract will be signed tomorrow morning.
To be back up to Digre?
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
He'll be the new third keeper. Oh my God.
Now we're talking about keepers. Chances are that we'll bring back Dafar as well as the second keeper. There were 4 teams that
give him that
called
experience.
He's got called up. Yeah. There are 4 teams in Italy and Serie A that want to get him on loan, and this is also something that. This is one of the 1,000 things that creates tension between Comoli and Spalletti, because Comoli wants to bring him back, wants to, show him the ropes or whatever you want to call it, while Spalletti is not so eager to. So I'm not sure. I'll keep you posted, but Alisson, I expect tomorrow we'll see
amazing
official confirmation, but I don't think we'll see anything on Juventus.com yet before we have dealt with Liverpool in a fashionable sense, in the way that I don't think there's going to be a fee involved, in all honesty. I've just asked now, but I have no reply back. But what I feel is that there's not going to be a fee involved. Alisson left on pretty good terms, and Liverpool,
and has given so much to that club too.
Well, yeah. Even if there is a fee, quote unquote, Frederic, would it simply not come out of Chiesa's obligation, such that there would be no money exchanging hands, even if they asked for something? Correct.
That's one of the options, and I think, from what I could tell, Comoli pushed that agenda forward, and now it's in the hands of Alisson's management. They are basically negotiating the out with Liverpool, but I don't think that anything will stand in the way. People at Liverpool already said we'd be happy to let him, finish his goalkeeper chapter in Italy. because he has such fond memories of Italy. And it's worth mentioning as well that Alisson himself stated towards Liverpool board already in October that he felt a bit homesick in the sense that he couldn't, he found it difficult to adjust to British standards and whatever. I'm pretty sure that his injuries somewhat stem from there, I think.
Well, that's speculation. Regardless, Allison's not so old from a keeper standards that he can't do a job and be
34,
from day.
Right? 34?
I think 33, 34. Day one, he's our best goalkeeper on the roster. What we saw this year was, and what is on my back wall here, staring over my shoulders, are three keepers, which are just absolutely been horrible this year as a collective. He does give us an improvement day one in a position of desperate need.
Yeah, and I might add for the people, because I see Chad's been a bit divided in the sense that is he good or not. I'm not gonna talk about that because I thought that Douglas Luiz was a good signing as well, and look where we are. But I do know for a fact that Alisson himself pushed a lot to make the deal happen. To move to Juventus, he had several other options, even within Italy, and he chose Juventus. And it was very smooth. I think the second meeting already, he made it very clear that he wanted to move to Juventus. So, regardless of the quality that he brings in, and I think he'll bring in a massive amount of quality, and if the FAR comes back, he'll make the FAR grow as well, I feel, because a keeper with such experience, if you train alongside him every day as another keeper, well, of course you're going to learn. So I think it's a two-way win for us. But
it's a multiple way win. With no disrespect to some of the people in our YouTube chat here saying this is not what we need. But let's consider what we've actually seen this season and what this signing means, right? So goalkeeping, we gave up 16 goals on first shot opportunities this season. That's a little less than half of our games where we conceded on the first shot. I know Alisson has not had the best of his seasons, but he's also had injuries. So at worst case scenario, we're getting an experienced winner who has a winning mentality and has won, who is coming with essentially very minimal, if any, financial outlay, who wants to be here, who has played and likes this coach, and probably has upside to what we've seen this season. And even if marginally better than our current goalkeeping situation, all of that adds up to a pretty good worst case outcome. Best case outcome is he gets back to where he was and ends up being an unstoppable force, where once we go up a goal or two, like, game, set, match, because we have someone like that in the back who's going to be able to pull out one or two fantastic saves a game, and you can rely upon him in those situations. This is a win-win-win in so many different ways.
Yeah, I'd also add to that, Kevin. Every single one of those points is great, but not just between the sticks. But I do like philosophically, real quick, Frederic, what you said about Dafara coming back, right, and having someone who can coach him. Philosophically, I think that's a great strategy, to have an experienced keeper leading the line and have someone behind him who's learning. But having a secure keeper who communicates well, knows the position, has high expectations, knows what success looks like behind a defensive line makes your defensive line better, right?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, playing. I mean, I was a defender for most of my short-ass playing career, but having a secure keeper behind you can change the way you play. 100% change you, not only the way you play physically and tactically, but mentally. You feel much more secure when you have the ball at your feet, when your back is to goal, when someone's trying to run in past you in the channel, or, crosses coming in. There's just a sense of security there that allows you to play with more calmness, composure, and more security. And I think that can make a big difference, not just Alisson himself in his 18-yard box, but the players around him.
Yeah, and also the fact that, and then we have to be very honest here, I think DK Goyer cost us at least somewhere between 9 and 12 points this season. If you just look at it holistically. So, bringing somebody in who qualitatively is still up there. Granted, he has some issues with injuries, and the fact that keeper can also train or be the mentor of a very, 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 because the Fara's really out of this world, promising player. I'd say it's worth a shot in my book.
Yeah, absolutely.
The risk is minimal, if at all. Considering our financial state, to get a goalkeeper in who day one is going to be better than what we have on a free, or effectively a free. I mean, you have to take these wins when you can get them, and you got to take them quick.
So that would be a piece of good news, and showing some quick action and taking a problem area of performance this year kind of quote unquote off the table as we go into the rest of the Mercato, instead of having something like that drag on. And if that is a move that does get wrapped up in the next 24, 36 hours, for me, like, hats off to the Juve management for getting that done and getting it done quickly. Now, the conversation will continue throughout the rest of this week, and I'm sure going into next week, around what are the other changes that need to happen given what we saw this season. And there's a level of accountability that needs to be there. And if Juve continues forward with the current management system not making changes, it's because there's a belief that continuity and stability is what the club needs, and there's a plan to move forward. And if we move on from these players, it's because that there isn't plan, there isn't cohesion, and the risk of having continuity is the risk of moving on from having that stability is worth a reset. And it seems, from what is being said, we heard from Comoli and Spalletti yesterday, the Italian press and what we're seeing in the media seems to indicate that, in fact, Spalletti will not be resigning. And I think there was pretty low odds of that to begin with. But Comoli may actually be staying on, and that bridges can be kind of rebuilt or things mended in the interest of a shared vision. And I think as long as that there's unity in a vision and what we're doing and what needs to be fixed, then that can actually be a good thing rather than trying to change things out. So what I'd like to do, guys, is give each of you an opportunity to share three things. Three things if you were Elkan and you had the keys to the kingdom and you had the passcodes to all of to the bank accounts. Which three things would you be doing? Not comprehensive, just three things that come to mind. It could relate to structure within the management team. It could relate to the coach. It could relate to a transfer strategy that you want to push. It could be investment. But I'd love to get your perspective on just three things that you would do if you were Elkan in this offseason.
I mean, there's only two that jump to mind for me, and they're kind of big. So yeah, you could obviously break them down. But I think the first thing is drive alignment between your management structure. We've heard too much about Spalletti talking to Elkan, what's Comoli doing, and what has Ottolini been doing for Comoli. And then you have Chiellini over there kind of pushing stuff that seems somewhat in contradiction. If you're sticking with these guys, they need to all be pointed in the right direction, or somebody's got to go. That's point number one. Point number two is if you, again, sticking with this leadership structure in Comoli, get rid of people. I think somebody said, Del Piero in the chat said, sell everything. Koopmeiners has to go. Digre has to go. And these are guys, like, Digre might be the nicest guy in the world, but after it is obvious to anybody who is amongst or watching this team that he has had a horrible year. Keeping a player like that signals something. You need to get rid of all of these guys who, by their play or by their demeanor on and off the pitch, are causing the sickness that we talked about earlier in this episode. And in the past, Elcon and the board, and for obvious reasons, public company, they don't want to take a loss on any player. They need to take a loss on some of these players to get rid of folks who, again, by their play or by their demeanor on and off the pitch, is diminishing this team and inhibiting a culture of progress, if not culture of winning. And those are the two things I would do. And you trust the people. If you're retaining these guys, you trust them to then make those decisions. Hey, I want to sell Coop. We're going to lose money on him. He's a cancer. Bye-bye. No other discussion.
I'd also have two. I'm going to try to stick to the locker room, I think, and the field, because personally, I don't know enough about the behind the scenes, the goings on. And I think if you're going to make any kind of moves to a business structure, you have to have a clear understanding of what's happening. You can't fix things if you don't really know what's broken. So I'll start there. So the two things I would change: first, invest in the spine of the team. So we're starting to do that. Maybe Allison is that first piece. But if you go from goalkeeper to defender to midfield to striker, who on the roster now would you go forward and comfortably say should be a lock starter going forward in that line? Would you argue Bremer? Probably not. Who would you argue in the midfield? Who would you argue on the front line is a shoe-in to start a game? We don't have players who can make a difference regardless of who's playing in that line of the field around them. I think we're missing key players from goalkeeper all the way up to the front. So you have to invest in the spine of the team. We need a lock starter on every line. We need leaders on the defensive line, the midfield line, and the attacking line, and we don't have them. So that's the first thing I would do. The second thing I would do to look forward a bit is somehow, some way, whether you're calling them up as reserves, sit the bench, get 5 minutes here and there, start integrating more young players into the squad. So Agnelli gave us the gift of the next gen, and we've had the Sules and the Huysens, right, and Bangulas and whomever else come through and leave, and they've been fantastic at turning over the balance books, right, with those players. But we have not seen too much of an impact on the field from those players, bar maybe Sule a bit and Yildiz for sure, but we have not seen enough from the next gen have an impact on our play on the field as much as it has on our balance sheet. So those are the two things I would start with.
Not a third?
Those are the two I came up with right away. I'm sure I could sit here and come up with another. I know I wanted to give Fred the mic.
With problems so big, Kevin, we can't even get to the lower level. We got to start high level, and then your options are limited to get the third one.
Like, you'd have to solve some of those before you start digging in. That's a valid point. You have to.
No, fair enough. I'm actually going to jump ahead of Frederic. I'm going to share a couple of my thoughts here because I actually have to exit stage left here to go jump to some family obligations. So after I share this, the pod will continue. We've got some really great interaction on YouTube here, but Zach, Jack, and Frederic will plow forward. So I think for me, I mean, coming out of the Fiorentina match, emotion got the better of me, as I think it got the better of all of us. And it's like, quite frankly, just burn the Allianz to the ground and start over with a bunch of like U17 players or something that can actually show some heart and passion for the badge. But I think a calmer head has prevailed. And I do think if there is a way for relationship and thought process and the way that the club can be run, if Spalletti and Comoli can find common ground and actually work together and be men about it, that works well for the club to have a level of stability. And I'm just getting so tired of the carousel of the coaches, of the management. And I understand what needed to happen after the Plusvalenza situation and why Agnelli and team had to leave and why we needed a bunch of suits and lawyers and businessmen to come in. And it seems like we are trying to get some footballing minds in place here, but doing another round of change where there's another round of strategy, it just sets things back even further. But if there is genuinely a plan, and we understand what the elements of those plans are, and Comolli and Spalletti are aligned, I would start with that. And so the first thing I would do as Elkan would be to step out very clearly and indicate that these are the pillars of our management and front office, including the coach. And this is the plan moving forward, right? And be able to articulate some things that the club wants to be able to achieve from a sporting and non-sporting and revenue perspective, what we need to focus on, what the club saw as problems last year and the past previous years, and get a plan in place, make it public. We don't need all the details, but show something that there's some thought process that goes on behind the scenes, and you have people kind of marching in the same direction. So if there is a plan, I would stick with Comolli and Spalletti. Second thing, and something Frederic has been very vocal about, is really giving respect to the president role. And Ferrero has not shown us anything, and all we know about him is the running joke about how he falls asleep in the stadium. But other than that, I don't have a clue what he actually does. And to have past presidents like Agnelli, who was the face of the club, right? That can be the one out speaking, showing the public presence, while Comolli does the day-to-day management and operations of things in the background. That can be a great dynamic, but he doesn't have that, right? It's been very clear that Comolli is not a people person. He's not out in front of the camera. He's not even speaking Italian, and he doesn't have this aura or persona about him. So partnering him with a president who can balance that, I think, would be really important for us right now. I think the Agnelli talk, despite me personally, I would welcome him back. I don't think that's a realistic thing. But if there's somebody, and it's not going to be Del Piero for everybody who's saying let's bring him back, that's not going to happen. But if you have a Platini or someone like that, I don't know, Trezeguet, I don't know, right? But it's somebody who can have that role, I think, would be really important. And Jack, you took my other one, the third one, rebuilding the spine of the team. I'm starting with Allison. I think that's great. And I think maybe a sub bullet point to my third one, for those of you who have been listening to Turin Giants throughout the season, know I have been a pretty steadfast defender of Locatelli and his performance over this season. But sadly, I don't think he's the captain we build upon, and I don't think he's the anchor in the midfield. I don't know how realistic that is given the renewal, given his stature with where he is, but I think things don't change unless things change. And if you're going to stay with the CEO, you're going to stay with the coach. There's some leadership on the field and a presence in the midfield that probably should change. And if there's an exit strategy there and someone that you can bring in, I think that would serve us well.
I got my third real quick, Kevin. It probably needs no explanation. Burn the Creator Lab to the ground.
I've read a couple people say that. Yeah, just set that thing on fire.
Yeah. Sorry, that was my third. Took me a moment to think of it.
All right, Kevin, thanks for hosting. I'll take the reins
one
from here, and we'll pass it over to Frederic. So thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Ken.
Grazie.
All righty, Frederic, the question was for those just joining, if you were if you were Elkan, what would be the upwards of 3 things that you would do, assuming, as Kevin said, that Spalletti and Comolli stay, as it seems to be the case as of right now?
Well, I'm gonna answer that as if I'm not aware of the things that are happening in the background right now.
Well, why don't you tell us what's happening in the background? What are you?
I'll get to that. I'll get to that in a bit. But you asked me for my opinion. Let me have my opinion for
Okay. All
Pete's
right.
sake.
All right.
No, if I were Alcon, and given the fact that we've qualified for Europa League, which is objective failed, if you set the objective to qualification for Champions League, I'd get them all out, management and players, and I just, I can agree what Kevin said with the Plus Valenza thing. We had to change, and we did it so forced that we didn't look at the footballing aspect behind running a club. I think now is the ideal situation where we could implement that. And as Alcon, I'd say, okay, you're the coach. You were hired to get us fourth place. You didn't do that, despite all your rhetorics and philosophy behind the camera. Didn't happen. Out with you. I go to management. I said, okay, we set this objective. You're executive, blah 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 of this and of that and of so on. Didn't make it. Bye bye. And then I would, being Alcon, would be. I would assume that he'd get some advice from people in the know. And I'd start from top to bottom and work my way down. Okay, who's going to be present? Who's going to be the one that has a bond with management and players and who fits that bill? Contact them. I don't know who. I have no names. I'm not getting paid to have those. But let's say, for instance, a Platini. You discuss with him and you discuss your vision and you see if it aligns with their vision, and then you go from there and you say, okay, Michel, we've selected you. Now we need this person, that person, and that person. Who do you have in mind? I have this list of names. Do you have any names? Then you just work your way throughout that, and maybe, just maybe, you come out with something concrete, and you repeat that process throughout all the layers of management, and then you get to your team. And then you say to Michel Platini, you say, Michel Platini, your first job as president is to call together an urgent team meeting with everybody present, whether it be on Zoom, I don't care. You announce that you're the new president, and you'll tell them that you won't stand for the bullshit we've been seeing for the last 5 years. And I'm not talking about results, I'm talking about pure mentality. And I want you to be the focal point of that mentality and communicate that to the players and make them aware of the fact that we won't tolerate any insufficiencies anymore, especially in the mentality issue. And then if you have your capable people in place, you make sure they're aligned, you hold meetings daily, you moderate those meetings, and you set your standards and your objectives. Okay, what do we need? We need that type of player, that type of player, that type of player. Coach, do you agree? Yes, I agree. Let's go. And then you move forward and you'll say, guys, we don't have a lot of money. This is the budget. We might get some extra, but we'll put that to the side. This is rebuild year. In year 2, we want to compete for Scudetto. And you build upon that and you create this snowball effect. What we've been doing now is the other way around. We think, oh, but Koopman has played well. Surely he must be a good pick. You get them in without knowing if they'll be of added value. So we've been moving backwards, and I just like Juve to start acting like Juve again and doing the things we did well, especially on the Marotta, getting people in who were hungry, wanted to prove themselves, and knew what Juventus meant. Prime example is Vidal. How on earth haven't we found a Vidal in the last 8 years yet? Simple, because we don't have the right people in the right places.
Well, talking about right people in right places, Frederic, you seem to indicate you have some updates and or indications of shifting winds or the like within the organization. What can you tell us?
I'm going to go about this chronologically because there's been a lot of talk in media as well, and I want to bypass the whole media bullshit effect. So after the Fiorentina game, there was a meeting, an Exor meeting. Nobody involved, just Exor Board and Alcon, in which they kind of approved that they needed to break open the piggyback once again for saving us in terms of balance sheet. Elkan made it very clear that he wanted to do the things I just mentioned, and Exorbort thought that wouldn't be a good idea because firing Spalletti, firing Comoli, firing Modesto, firing Ottolini would cost a lot of money, balance-wise. And because of a lot of things that are already put into place for Mercato, because from what I could tell, everything that is planned to happen, bar from, one or two signings due to a lack of funds, everything is going to proceed as planned. So Exor Board asked Alkan if he could moderate between Comoli and Spalletti and see if they get divisions aligned. But they wanted to make sure that Comoli has no more interference with transfers per se. Of course, for Ottolini to take the reins or Spalletti to have carte blanche is a bit of a gamble as well. And that's why Spalletti himself wanted to bring Tognozzi back, who could work together with Ottolini and a bit of Spalletti's hand in that as well, to see if they can come up with something in terms of player transfers, incoming, outgoing. From what I could tell, the biggest issue right now and the person who has the most to lose is Modesto. There were a lot of things that came to light this last week about Modesto within management that weren't very positive, in the sense that I don't know how to put it in English, but let's just say he's somebody who could be very manipulative. And that came to light. It was also addressed by a lot of people towards Elkan. So I expect if anybody is to go, then it's going to be Modesto. And I think that Tognozzi might replace him numerically, not in the sense of the things that he needs to do. If that's the good way to move forward, I'm not so sure. From what I could tell, Comoli and Spalletti even had a bit of a vibrant discussion yesterday after the game. And Comoli blames Spalletti for not making the players render to their maximum. That's Comoli's biggest issue.
Well, that's a coach's job. That's a coach's job. And
Indeed,
I think we can all agree that, I mean, this flawed group of players didn't. Can't really argue with that.
In knowing what I know now and having a bit of a backstory, I side with Comoli 100%, because I'm not going to go into much detail because my source asked me not to about certain aspects, but I stand with Comoli. There's also a big difference in the way they want to move forward. Comoli wants this mixture of experienced players and new talents, whereas Spalletti is focusing on players that paid their dues, are in or just over their prime, because he thinks that the mentality issue could be fixed by those players, while Comoli feels that mentality is something that needs to be instilled from higher up and not just from players that are in the dressing room. And Comoli feels that everybody should be expendable and should be kept on their toes in terms of being replaceable as well. The two biggest issues they had was the contract negotiations with Vlahovic, because at the second meeting they had, Comoli said literally to Vlahovic's agent, who was Ristic back then, "You can fuck right off, I'm done," and left. 2 weeks later, Spalletti kept knocking on Comoli's door. "Please renegotiate, Ristic is gone, blah, blah, blah." So Comoli passed on the same contract extension to his dad that he gave to Ristic. He was basically scolded for doing that by Vlahovic and his father. And Spalletti sided with Vlahovic, which is not a good look. And the second thing is the Locatelli renewal, which was a bit forced upon by Spalletti. Spalletti felt that would give him a boost and make the dressing room be a bit more stable, in the sense that Juventus at that point acknowledged he's our captain, we're in it for the long run with Locatelli, and so forth and so forth. And Comoli said no, He doesn't merit his extension. And if he wants to make more money, there's the door. Spalletti then went to Elkan. Elkan said, we have the funds, so Comoli, please just do it. And yeah, this is what's happening right now. And you have a Modesto who's caught in between, siding with Spalletti on Monday and then siding with Comoli or Chiellini on Tuesday. So
And,
a shit show, like you said.
And that's why the first thing I said was, as if I was Elkan, I would get everybody pointing in the right direction or show them the door. But let's do a couple of rapid fires. And so I want everybody in chat to be ready, because we'll go this somewhat quick, but I'll give you time to respond. I want the folks in chat to respond to this too, so we can get sort of a critical mass. The question, and we're just gonna do 4 names right now, okay? Based on literally the players and the managers we were just discussing. In or out. All right. And so y'all can start putting your responses in the chat. In or out, Comoli, Spalletti, Locatelli, Dusan. Alrighty. While folks in the chat put their in or outs for Comoli, Spalletti, Locatelli, or Dusan, I wanna go through to the 2 gentlemen with me, and we'll go one at a time. So Juve since 95. I don't know if you're saying out for all 4 or just one of the 2. One of the 4. But we're going to start with Comoli. Jack, in or out?
Out.
Frederic?
In.
And okay, we got a disagreement here. So we'll pause here, let folks in chat give their opinions. Why out, Jack? Just, I guess, briefly, so that we can get through everybody.
In a few words, I feel like his role is the bridge between everything that happens behind the scenes and what we see publicly, and he's an absolutely atrocious communicator. I can't imagine he does a better job behind the scenes than he does in public, and I blame him for a lot of the inconsistencies in the management decisions. And that right there, that's his job, right? It's like a coach who can't coach or a race car driver who doesn't know how to drive. And I say Comoli out.
And I guess you kind of already described, I think, implicitly, Frederic, why you want him in, but give it to us again while I'm flashing up folks' responses in chat.
No, but also due to the fact I think you hired Comoli being Elkan, having a certain vision, and if that vision is not carried out throughout whole management, and you have people bypassing you or people just not listening to you, I feel that's not the good way to go around things. And also, there is a press conference planned with Comoli on behalf of Juventus, where he will state that he's very disappointed. And I know for a fact that Comoli doesn't feel supported, and rightfully so. And I feel that if you choose a path, and if you're Elkan and you stand by that, you should defend that at all costs. And, you know, having 5 trainers coming in and having them nag at you and say, oh, I don't like the AD, and the AD doesn't want to buy me player X, Y, or Z. For me, that's just not good business. So I think if you confide in someone, you give him the role of general director, let him be the general director. It's as simple as that, really. And if he makes mistakes, so be it. But at least, I mean, the mistakes that he made, which he will take accountability for, being the general director. Now you have this whole clusterfuck of people thinking that they can decide what they want whenever they want, and that's just not a solid base to build upon. So just, you know, for the sake of that argument, let's say Comoli in.
I think it's just to push back just from what it's very, very concerning that you would say that people bypass him in the decision-making process. That's his job. That's his role.
So him being bypassed is a product of Elkan allowing it to happen.
Correct.
I don't need to call you Comoli if I can call Elkan. That's an Elkan problem. That's not a Comoli problem.
Correct. They also don't respect him. It's clear they don't respect him or his decisions.
Well, no, they disagree with him. And so if Elkan gives you the option, we're a product of our incentives. If my incentive is to get X, Y, and Z done, and I feel I can get it from Elkan and not Comoli, and Elkan opens the door, I'm going to go to Elkan. That's an Elkan problem.
But then we're not respecting the hierarchy, right? Comoli has a role.
But ultimately,
yeah.
And you're a higher up, Jack. I know you then need to signal that as Elkan, that this is how the flow of information goes, and Elkan has been at fault for that.
Correct.
I think that's an unfair knock against Comoli.
Yeah, but it also goes back to my previous point about communicating, right? If I have an issue with people who are working for me, I go and I talk to them about it, right? They don't go bypass me to my superior, right? Because we would have an issue, and that would need to be corrected immediately.
Also, what I feel from what I'm hearing, so this is basically not just based on my opinion, but Kamoli is very strict in the sense of negotiating, and we talked about that at length, Zach, in the scoop as well.
Mhm.
But what he also does is he addresses the team after the um, Fiorentina game. He went in the dressing room, and everybody was waiting for him to take the word. And he said, "What are you waiting for? I'm not going to take the word. I'm not going to spend my energy, my words, and my breath on you guys because you're clearly not worth it." That's the type of person I need. That's the type of person I want. He'll take accountability, but he also knows when the accountability is not his. And in this case, it isn't. Because if you tell me that he created a poorly put together team, yes, true. On the other hand, if this team on paper, if you tell me that they're not as good as Roma, as Como, hell, even Milan, I'm sorry, but that's just not the case. Then it falls onto the players and the coach. And that's my opinion. Far from me to defend somebody. And I know he doesn't speak Italian and all that. I don't need him to speak Italian. I need him to bring us results. And
When
if you're going to put him in charge,
he
let him
accept,
be in
when
charge.
has he accepted accountability? Give me one. Maybe I missed it. Give me one time where he's gotten in front of the camera and been like, "I fucked up." Not one.
Yesterday, yeah, yesterday he said that on the zone. He said, "This is also my fault. I take full responsibility. I'm the manager. And I want to make sure that this doesn't happen again because Juventus needs to go back to winning ways. And regardless of Champions League, Europa League, we're building on creating a winning Juventus."
I bet it, Fred. But the Titanic already hit the iceberg. Sure, Smith is going down with the ship. Fine. That's not the time to
He,
come out and say we made a mistake. Yes, it is the time, but there were many opportunities before that to accept responsibility for what's going on.
we had a deal with 3 coaches prior to Spalletti. They were all basically not how can I put it, not chosen by Chiellini or Elkan. And apart from the names, apart from the people, this it's in itself is wrong. Because if you're the general director and you choose a coach, which is well within your responsibilities, then the owner or the director of footballing strategy, or what Chiellini's fancy name is, needs to shut up and say, "Okay, boss, you choose that guy, let's go for it." And for instance, it was Inzaghi. And I'm not going to say Inzaghi would have done better or whatever and his past at Inter and blah, 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 blah. But there was a thought process behind it. And I feel if you're a general director, you make these decisions which are crucial, but then you're being spoon-fed other players, other coaches, other initiatives to ensue. Then the hierarchy that you created, you're self-destructing.
And I'm gonna interrupt because we've talked about the coaches a lot now, and I've been starting to flash up for those watching from in chat who have given their opinion on Spalletti, who we're going to next. The majority of folks in chat, overwhelmingly so, were Kamoli in. Some put conditions on it, but overwhelmingly so, Kamoli in. The same is not true for Spalletti. Magical Realism, whose comment I have currently on the screen that says spaghetti in, is a minority.
Spaghetti is always good.
I enjoy spaghetti as well, but we know he's jokingly referring to Spalletti. Most people seem, as the comments I've been flashing up prior to this, seem to indicate Spalletti out. And a lot of people in the chat as well, Frederic, were quite appalled by the story that you were telling with regards to Spalletti's sort of backroom shenanigans. So as folks give maybe their specific thoughts on Spalletti, and we have some really good funny opinions on Locatelli coming up, so I'm excited to get to that. But before we get ahead of ourselves, Jack, Spalletti, in or out?
I'd say Spalletti in, just to want to give him a preseason and an opportunity to right the ship in collaboration with the front office if we can kind of build that relationship. But I think we haven't had a coach that had a proper preseason, I feel like, and lasted the entire season in a while. So I think he needs a proper preseason and Mercato to see what he can do with this team.
Frederic.
I'd go with Spalletti out because listen, if you have a better choice. Because if you just sack somebody just to send out a message, but you're left with next gen coach, then it doesn't help the project.
Your favorite
the
word.
squad.
I know you hate that.
Yeah.
But that's obvious, right? If you play out my suggestion about forcing alignment, where you're Elkan, you say Camoli's the guy I appointed, kind of Jack's point. Camoli's the guy I've appointed. I don't want to hear from you. I want to hear from him and him alone. You got a problem? Yeah. You go to this person, you go to that person, then you go to him. And if Spalletti is like, I'm 67 years old, I'm not doing it, well, then you fire him, okay? And then you say, okay, Camoli, Modesto, Darren Burgess, Chiellini, all these guys come together. What is our strategy? What is our plan? And if your plan is, okay, we expect to do this year, that year, and this the third year to get back to challenging for the Scudetto. Okay, what coaches are available for that? And you say, oh, Palladino just got fired. He'd be the perfect guy. Okay, if he aligns with a strategy, a unified vision of the leadership structure, not saying that he does or I'm putting him forth. That's just the name that popped to mind. Then do it, right? But you need to have that alignment between the management structure, right? That's what you kind of what you're talking about, right, Frederic?
Yeah, of course. And with Spalletti, and I always thought that this was going to be the case, that he would stay for a year to lay the foundation. Then we get somebody a bit better, in my opinion, or at least a better communicator. And that's not the case. And I know for a fact that Camoli had other plans, coaching-wise. And I feel that you need to let him decide if you're the AD, and whether it be Palladino, whether it be Inzaghi, whether it be Guardiola for that matter, doesn't matter. The AD needs to take these decisions, needs to report only to the owner, and I feel that should be everything. That being said, I can't see Spalletti leaving. I just hope that, he learns from this, because if we're going into November and then we start doing the things we did the last 5 years by firing coaches at that point in time and having to rebuild middle season, I can't see it working out well. So forget also the Conte talk, as long as El Canzone Conte's not coming back.
Yeah, no, I'm not a big fan of that.
Thank God.
All right, so we've done Camoli, we've done Spalletti. Next on my list was Locatelli. I think the consensus is, albeit a much closer race on the Spalletti front, was the consensus in chat was Spalletti out, but it was much closer than the Camoli one. Locatelli, we've got three main responses from folks: Locatelli in, Locatelli out, and Locatelli in but strip the captaincy. Okay, so those are your three choices. Gentlemen on the panel, as well as folks who have not spoken specifically about Locatelli in chat. I feel like the outs are currently winning, but Jack, out, in, or in sans Capitano?
In a vacuum, Locatelli.
No, not a vacuum. In the world we live in, Jack.
He just signed a new contract. The offer, I would sell him if the offer is reasonable. Yeah, Locatelli out. I guess okay. I'll have to say Locatelli out if I'm being short. I think there's a lot of other variables, but put me on the outside.
Frederic.
Out.
We have our first agreement. And if I might, oh, by the way, Dan Colosimo is in the chat. We have a Dan sighting. Time to tell embarrassing stories about him without his permission. He has informed us that Locatelli was named SofaScore's Serie A midfielder of the season, qualifying it by saying that the stats can be quite misleading. We have a lot of folks in chat saying out. We got some folks saying obviously in give him less responsibility. That is sort of a dark horse with regards to Locatelli. And I think if I might share my opinion real quick, is that my big call for Locatelli starting last year, midway through the season, was for him to step up to be the leader, because with Danilo gone, there's really no candidate on our team to be so. Bremer was injured at the time, and he's really not a vocal person anyways. Not that you necessarily have to be a leader. And I think we have enough body of proof to show that Locatelli is not the leader that this team needs. I think his play has been good enough for this version of Juventus, but his leadership is desperately lacking. And nobody can look at Spalletti or Locatelli, the captain and the coach, and say, oh, we should give you a free pass, despite being the two leaders on a team that finished worse, the worst that Juventus has in 15 years. And that team 15 years ago would probably wipe the floor with this one today. I think if you keep the coach, it's really hard to strip the captaincy. If Spalletti stays, it'd be hard pressed unless you bring in somebody legitimate to have the captaincy stripped. But I would be so inclined to bring in a new coach, and I would, if I was Comoli, for instance, give him full reign to strip Locatelli of his captaincy day one, because you can't look anybody in the eyes if you're the captain of the worst Juventus in 2 decades and say, oh, you deserve to be captain. You can't say that. They don't. And he's demonstrated as much to say that in the second last game of the season where we lost, he goes, oh, we're going to grow from this. Yes, you grew from it to draw Torino after having a 2-0 lead. Get out of here. I think with the nature of where this team is, I'm probably in the keep Locatelli, but strip him of his captaincy. If he is a toxic locker room presence, and this applies to anybody on our team, I don't care who you are. If you're a toxic locker room presence with your behavior overtly or not, then I want to sell them all. We can't have, if he puts his head down, nose to the grindstone, works hard, I'm here for the team. Okay, fine. Keep strip captaincy. But if he, and I don't know exactly, though some indications through Frederic has indicated he's not always a positive influence. But if he's a toxic influence in that locker room, then I'm full out for any player.
Yeah. Can I quickly respond? I saw a question popping up concerning a transfer, the name of Robertson, and I've just texted and received a reply.
Hey, okay. People love the drop. Would you permit us, Frederic, since you've got something pretty fresh, would you permit you're so bad.
We spoke about Robertson a couple of episodes.
We did
ago. So we were once again the first, hence the scoop name. But
can we, Frederic, please?
Yeah, just go ahead, man.
And now Freddie Scoops with the scoop. He's the best in the business, see?
We have asked information about Robertson a couple of weeks ago already. Robertson, the Scottish national player, is very attracted by playing for Juventus, but Tottenham and Liverpool have reached an agreement that Tottenham would have a preference over any other team whilst he becomes a free agent. So I'm not sure how that's going to develop. I think it'll be up to personal preference by Robertson. But I know for a fact that Tottenham are counting dearly on him to join their ranks and have been targeting him for months. If we were to hijack them or hijack Robertson from Tottenham, it'll have to move on swiftly. Having that said, maybe, just maybe, we'll see some development starting Wednesday. Maybe.
All right.
Only don't kill each other. You never know.
All right, we have one more player. I think the Locatelli outs took that one. That was a close one as well. from he's our best midfielder to I can't stand him is the general sentiment that is being expressed in the chat. Last one, folks, and then maybe we'll end with some transfer questions that are flowing through for you, Frederic. But Il Capitano helps us out. Then the last name on our quick, but not at all ending up to be quick session of in and out is Dusan Vlahovic. Jack, we're going to you first.
Since I'm not allowed to operate in the vacuum, I'll just say Dusan out.
Yeah, no vacuums.
He's shown us what he is. I don't know. While it'll be difficult because we'll have to spend money to sign a striker, I don't see him doing any more than those random occasional flashes in the pan of being a soccer player. I think we get more of the same that we've grown accustomed to for the past few years. So Dusan out.
Well, for me,
sorry for those listening after the fact. We're laughing at some of the comments that are flashing.
He's surely is a beloved player at Juventus. We could tell.
Not in chat right now, I tell you that much. But Frederic,
I'm on both sides of the fence in the sense that if we were to offer him a lower contract and he would accept, then I'd say keep him. Not because of the money, because it's not coming out of my pocket, but that would show that he has some love for Juventus, that he's willing to, not make as much and fight for his place. And of course, if you have other ideas as a coach and you want to play with two strikers, which I still can't shake the feeling that Spalletti wants to. He wants to get back to that 4-4-2. Then I'd say, at a couple million per year and with the 4-4-2 in your back of your head, maybe you can keep him. If that's not the case, he can drop his wage and Spalletti has no interest in playing with two strikers. Get him out ASAP. Because if you deliver me a striker who makes 30 goals a season, but is obnoxious and a bit toxic, I can deal with that. But if you bring me a striker who has all those attributes, but barely scores 15 goals a season, all competitions included, then the pros, the cons outweigh the pros by a lot. Inzaghi was very toxic, had a bad relationship with Del Piero. Like they didn't see eye to eye anywhere apart from on the pitch. But we kept him because he was a goal machine. Dusan is not a goal machine. So, if the cons in this case to me outweigh the pros, out.
Juve fan asks, no attackers from the Primavera. Well, I'll say the starting striker is 35 years old, and their top scorer is a left back. So, Juve fan, I think that answers your question. The Dusan, look.
I'm so over Dusan and discussing Dusan.
I can't. He drives me absolutely nuts. He's not a good football player at all. I watch him play and I see high schoolers who are better and more technical, who try harder and are more physical. It is an absolute indictment that we brought in two strikers and we had Milik for the briefest of cameos be so useless that we even have to have the discussion of whether Dusan Vlahovic should stay at Juventus. Wow. It is embarrassing. It's a representation of how far this team has fallen, how bad the players around him have performed, that a guy who cannot complete a pass and has no first touch is even in the equation to be a part of this Juventus team moving forward. A player who we said an hour ago only plays for himself and doesn't give a hoot about anything else. We're having a conversation that he should be part of the team. And it's even worse that I'm going to sit here and say, you know what, maybe another season would be good, when it's because I have no faith that the management can bring in a player to realistically be better. Now, I qualify everything with regards to this by saying, if he is as detrimental in the locker room as I suspect he is, then go. pull up the 35, 36-year-old guy that I can't remember from the next gen, have him start for us. I'd rather a guy like that come in than someone who's going to be toxic. But absent explicit, proof or a reality where he is that toxic character and thing, you have to pick and choose your battles. We got too many holes in this team. Bring in a second striker and have them compete. But I don't know if you can dump 4 strikers in a window and realistically replace them.
We sure as shit are gonna try.
I would love us to try, and I would love us to be successful. Right? I mean, I said this.
That's another question.
I said this when Mota joined, and pretty much every coach since. If Milik could be freaking healthy, he would be the best striker on our team. He was a very functional, complete striker. Good in the air. Dušan's not. More physical. Dušan's not, despite his size. He can pass. Dušan can't. He's got a first touch. Dušan doesn't. But the guy's career's over. Right? You can't hope for that. The Jonathan David we saw at Lille, the Openda we saw at Leipzig, they don't exist anymore, or they certainly don't exist in Torino.
I think that's the biggest issue. Why are these players
that needs someone?
Once they step foot at Casale, why are they lost? And it's like the Space Jam movie where the monsters take away the talent from the player. It seems to happen to every player that we buy. It's
but pick one. Pick one that hasn't had that narrative as part of their career when they joined Juventus. I mean,
Colomwani.
Yeah, 5 months. Yeah, it's a small sample size, but
by the way, thank you. Matthias has corrected me. The veteran striker for the next gen, who's kind of their leader, and usually their top scorer is Guerra. So I appreciate you correcting me. I'm so annoyed with this Vlahovic talk that I could barely think straight.
Do you want me to lighten up your mood a bit?
Make me feel warm and fuzzy inside, Frederic. I need this right now. Make all of us here, the 116 or so watching, the 3 of us, or me and Jack, make us feel better.
Okay. 2 things. 1, there's a meeting planned with Vlahovic's dad, but not with our management, but Juventus's, Real Madrid's management.
That dude in Spain, go ahead, sign
on specific request of Mourinho is what they tell me. Colo, I'd hang on with the Allison video. I'm not completely convinced that everything is going as easy as it should, but that's another thing. And the second thing, Cambiaso is officially on the market.
Oh, so yeah, I guess we could say that we're kind of onto just largely Q&A at this point, transfer focused. Consider it maybe a mini scoop. I'm surprised you told Colo not to make the video. I mean, things seem well in hand. You could get some footage ready.
Liverpool, the way I see it, especially with the Robertson situation, Liverpool still, is the current owner of Alisson, and I'm pretty sure they won't make too big of a fuss about it. But you still need to find a way to make it work with Alisson and Liverpool, and I'm not so sure, because with everything that's going on management wise, I know that Alisson was a Comoli name. 100%. I'm 100% convinced of this. And in retrospect, if you see that they're bumping heads, I mean, the coach and our general director, and our coach is to have, or said to have, a meeting with our owner. I'm not sure. And I know that Beppe confirmed Alisson, and I know that whoever in social media, I'm just careful. I don't want Dan to spend his free evenings not working out and making videos. Go work out, Dan.
I mean, handsome bastard there.
Handsome bastard.
That takes effort.
I would only say that it's nice to hear Cambiaso's on the market, but I think we just go through the next couple of months, even you guys on the scoop, with who's not on the fucking market. Get them all out.
Well, hold on. We have a really important question here. I'm kind of curious. Jack and Frederic, would you rather have Rabiot's mom or Vlahovic's dad to deal with management?
Vlahovic's dad. Of course. Rabiot's mom is pure terror. I think a lot of people at Continas are still shaking when you say her first name out loud. But no, I don't think the whole Vlahovic thing escalated because of the discrepancies in opinions that Comoli and Spalletti had. And I think those were one of the things that made the relationship move along so awkwardly. Because if you, as a general director, keep in mind that what you have to spend, what you've already paid, and you see the results that are coming in, and you're not satisfied with that, but your coach says, well, I am. Well, that's good for you, but you don't have to pay the bills. You're not responsible for doing so. And if you start from that point, and it's even more critical when the player's still on your team. Because you have a coach that says on national media, hey, if Vlahovic is fit, I'll put him in. Never mind the rest. You know, it's difficult, and the same can be said for Allison now as well, because it's clearly a Comoli name, and I'm not sure if Dan or whoever is. I'm not sure what to expect. Let me put it this way.
But you did seem to indicate that we should expect it soon.
Well, not that Juventus will publish it, but I know, and I've been saying on the scoop as well, that Allison agreed terms with Juventus.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, pre-contracts in this day and age don't mean anything. If Bournemouth comes out tomorrow and says, hey, Allison, we'll double your salary or what you're getting at Juventus, who knows? Then the pre-contract is worthless, because the pre-contract doesn't hold any legal water in that sense. So I'm not sure what to expect in that point. Is Spalletti gonna criticize every move that Comoli's making now? Will Alcon allow him to do so? And will it work vice versa as well? That no matter who the name is or what the cost is, that Comoli, will seek revenge in that sense and say, okay, no, we're not gonna buy him. I'm the general director, and then push everything to Alcon once more. I think we need to untangle that web first. So I'm not gonna go out on a limb here and say it's a done deal. And I'm sure Beppe has a lot of good sources. Maybe they know more than my sources do. I hope so, because I think Allison would be a great addition to the game or to our team. But I'm a bit more cautious than Beppe. Plus, I don't have Twitter.
Yeah, no, Beppe is very active. I don't either. So I think there's two names, and then we'll wrap it up. We've eclipsed 2 hours, so we were going to wrap this up. But two names that I think we have to. One I want to, the other one I feel like we have to. So the first one that I want to see is, and we've been asked this a few times, pretty much in all of our episodes lately, Frederic, Ibrahim. Any updates, thoughts, chances there?
Brahim Diaz was a request of Spalletti, as I've said a couple of scoop episodes as well. He sees him as the perfect trequartista. Comoli feels different. I'm not sure how I can put this without disrespecting any of the two sides. If Bernardo Silva was to join Juventus,
well, that's my second name. That's my second name that I think we didn't update. So why don't you rope it all together and give it to us?
If Bernardo Silva was to join Juventus, you could be sure that no matter which players he had around him, he would be an upgrade. That would be a sure shot. That would be, bullseye straight away. It's not like the Koopmeiners situation. It's Bernardo Silva brings quality in midfield. Spalletti thinks the same about Brahim Diaz. Comoli doesn't. And Comoli says, if I need to spend money, I want to spend money on sure shots and not gambles because a coach or an agent or the sister of a relative of a friend thinks that he could be the next big thing. And of course, Comoli uses his algorithm. And the algorithm said no. in the sense that they outweighed his. I don't know how they do it, but it wasn't positive or positive enough to make that move. So once again, we'll see where the clash of the Titans will lead us on to, uh, and then to get back to Bernardo Silva. From what I'm hearing, the wages that they're offering for him, nuts. They're willing to top. Certain clubs are willing to top the wages he has at Manchester. He makes 12 million net.
Fuck.
They're willing to go.
Who's topping that?
I have no names, but I do know that there is an offer from a Saudi Arabian club.
Yeah, but he said he doesn't want to go.
Yeah, okay, but the offer's there, no matter if he wants to go or not. But it's going to be threefold of what he's making now. Threefold, 45 million.
Well, this is the thing.
Net.
We knew Frederic. If he was going to come to Juventus, it's because he's charmed by the project, not because he wants a payday. That was baseline.
No.
If it ends up being a payday discussion with Bernardo Silva, which to date,
no,
I'm not aware of that. We're never going to win the payday discussion, right? It's the charm offensive.
The charm offensive that we've been doing for a year now. It's not just all about money. There are two issues. There's no Champions League,
of course,
which is a big point, whether we want to admit it or not. Bernardo Silva wants to win trophies, which is a mentality that we lack at Juventus. Hence why we want to purchase him or get him in. That's one obstacle. The biggest obstacle, and I'm going to be frank, his family lives in Portugal. Portugal, or Porto, where his family resides, is 1,600 kilometers away from Turin, which is not a whole lot. Madrid is 500 kilometers away.
So you're talking about the Atleti rumors that have come out?
Not only Atletico.
Really? Well, in the interest of time, because we're going to wrap up now, Jack, if you could pick one player, seeing as Frederic kind of pitched them as alternatives, Brahim Diaz or Bernardo Silva, which one would you take?
Oh, Bernardo Silva in a heartbeat.
I think not only for his unquestionable technical ability, but for the leadership intangibles. I think if Bernardo Silva walks into a team and Spalletti says, to go back to our earlier discussion, Locatelli, he's captain now. I mean, you could throw a hissy fit if you're Locatelli, but not justifiably, right? If he threw a hissy fit for that, then that tells you everything you need to know.
The ironic thing of it all is Bernardo Silva is actually the player that both Comoli and Spalletti see eye to eye on.
Well, then make it happen. Get it done. So yes, I guess the question is, and this has been asked for a few people, is yes, there is still a chance, right, Frederic? There's nothing indicating that we are out of the Bernardo Silva running.
It's going to be a slim one, especially with all the turmoil that's been going on, within Juventus lately. And of course, the fee, because as I said on the last episode, we made him an offer which was insufficient in terms of wages. And we were willing to go beyond that offer just to get him in, which makes sense. The question we have to ask ourselves now is, without that Champions League money, qualification, everything that comes with it, is that still sustainable? Because we could go all, CR7 mode and just say, hey, we'll get the money together and we'll see what happens. But we don't have the depths financially now as we did back then.
True, but you have Vlahovic, who is by far, bar none, the highest paid player in Serie A. You show him the door, and you just say, Bernardo Silva, we will make you the highest paid player in Serie A, whatever that is. We'll give you
was
€1
our offer.
Above.
Yeah, that was basically our offer, which was meh to Bernardo Silva. We offered 8 plus 3, I think, with very easy obtainable bonuses, which was about 11 million net. And it was like, oh, So yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I'm not too optimistic because I feel that if Bernardo Silva would have joined Juventus, that would be the weapon that we would have preferred to use because everything is over and done now, especially in the UK. And if you face this turmoil as Juventus and you want to alleviate the fans a bit, then that's the first bit of news that you'll confirm officially and say, okay, guys, but we got Bernardo Silva, or make it happen a lot more quicker than we're doing now. And I think every day that goes by without having more or less official news in the sense of Romeo Agresti or Fabrizio Romano, with the deadline that he's given himself, that he'll choose his team before the World Cup, every day that passes makes our chances slim significantly.
Well, we got a busy little bit coming here, folks. You know, we did this episode. We're going to do our season review where we go player by player, moment by moment, blah, 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 blah. That episode this week. I'm sure in and around there or soon after, probably next week after the Champ League's final, Frederic and I will be doing a scoop, which will tuck in nicely between Champs League final and the beginning of the World Cup. So stay tuned for those types of episodes coming up. If you have questions for us, want to reach out to us, we're always reviewing the comments to these videos, whether it be on YouTube or Spotify or the like. You can reach out directly to us on Instagram. Kevin said it at the top of the show. Turin Giants is our sort of parent one. Frederic, you can reach out to him directly. And like I do every so often, send him harassing messages at the Scoop Juve on Instagram. So reach out to us if you have questions, thoughts, opinions, or want to continue discussion further. But for now, 2 hours and 11 minutes in, Frederic,
I just want to highlight one question.
One more thing.
Yeah, because I saw Calcio TC5 asked this numerous times already, and we didn't get to it. He asked about Taylor's involvement, and I know a lot of media reported that they can, put in money, which is true, but not in the sense that we view it, because they hold a certain percentage of Juventus, and Exor decides to do capital increasement worth 50 million and Exor holds 65%, then they can do the same relative to their numbers of stock that they have. So it's not saying like, hey, Taylor, you can put in a gazillion million euros just for the fuck of it. No, there are certain things that they need to attain. The only difference now is in the past, Elkan didn't invite him to contribute to said how do you call it? How do you call such a thing when they inject capital into?
I mean, just call it a capital increase.
Capital increase. Yeah. So they can send some money our way, but not limitless, or not the amount that they choose.
Thank you, Frederic. Thank you, Jack. Thank you most importantly. Oh, and thank you to Kevin, who had to leave earlier. But thank you most importantly to the many of you who participated throughout this live show in chat, giving us your ins and your outs, giving us your thoughts, your opinions, your questions. We really do this. And frankly, the only reason we did this for 2 hours and 12 minutes was because we were enjoying interacting with all of you. So that's the biggest thanks. Thank you for putting up with us for the entire season. Look forward to our summer content, but we just want to take this last minute at the very end of this to extend our appreciation to all of you. Thank you very much. We appreciate you. Stick with us for over the summer as we break everything else down. And until then, as always, Forza Juve.